Imagine a future where you don't actually speak with words.
Right.
Instead, you project a memory so vividly that the person sitting next to you can actually taste the rain from that day.
Yeah, or physically feel the exact nervous flutter in your stomach.
Exactly. And I mean, that sounds like absolute unadulterated science fiction. But what if the mathematical reality of our current technology says we are entirely on track to see it happen in our lifetimes?
It's wild to even wrap your head around.
It really is. It seems like every time you open your phone lately, there is this overwhelming flood of news about artificial intelligence.
Oh, totally.
It feels like the fundamental rules of the future are just being rewritten every single Tuesday. And honestly, trying to keep your head above water is exhausting.
It's exhausting because we are hardwired biologically to expect tomorrow to look pretty much like yesterday.
Right, we expect a straight line. But what happens when human brains, which think in these straight, predictable lines, suddenly collide head-on with technology that is growing exponentially?
That's the million-dollar question.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because today we are taking a deep dive into a genuinely mind-bending TEDx talk by a thinker named Judah Antilla.
Yeah, it's titled Our Next 20 Years, AI, Capitalism, and Fractal Minds.
And we are looking at a roadmap for you that goes from the end of your desk job to, well, the complete redefinition of what it means to be alive.
It is a wild trajectory. And before we get into the actual timeline, which, fair warning, is going to challenge basically every assumption you have about reality, we really need to ground this.
Right, like where are these ideas actually coming from?
Exactly. Antilla isn't just throwing darts at a board here. He is drawing heavily on the predictive framework of Ray Kurzweil.
Okay, Ray Kurzweil.
Yeah. And if you aren't familiar, Kurzweil is the director of engineering at Google. And he holds, get this, 21 honorary doctorates.
21. I mean, at a certain point, you just have to stop framing them, right?
You run out of wall space.
Yeah.
But his track record is what is truly staggering here. Over the past 30 years, Kurzweil has made 147 specific predictions about the trajectory of technology.
Wait, 147?
Yeah. And depending on how strictly you grade him, he maintains about an 80% accuracy rate.
That is insane for a 30-year period.
It is. We're talking about a man who, back in 1999, accurately predicted the explosive, ubiquitous growth of the internet and the arrival of something functionally identical to the iPhone,
Wow.
and even the rise of large language models. He was basically predicting ChatGPT decades before it existed.
And he didn't do that by just guessing brand names, obviously. He did it by looking at the raw math, which is where we really have to start today.
Absolutely.
Because to understand how we get from our current AI chatbots to literally tasting a memory, we have to grasp the fundamental mechanism driving all of this, the math of the future.
Right. The simple, undeniable fact that computation is exponential.
Yes, the number of calculations a computer can do per second for a constant dollar amount, it doubles every single year.
And what's fascinating here is how difficult that concept of doubling is for our biological brains to genuinely
We
visualize.
just aren't built for it.
We really aren't.
The source actually uses this incredibly powerful analogy to highlight that gap between our linear thinking and technological doubling. Think about it like taking a walk.
Okay.
If you take 20 literal steps forward in a straight linear line, you get to 20. You are exactly 20 steps away from where you started.
Right. Simple enough.
But if you take 20 doubling steps, meaning step 1 is 1, step 2 is 2, step 3 is 4, then 8, 16, and so on, by the time you hit step 20, you aren't at 20.
No, you just definitely aren't.
You are at over 1 million.
And if you want to make that visceral, just look at data storage over your own lifetime.
Oh yeah, that's a great point.
Think about 40 years ago. A single terabyte of data storage cost roughly $4 million.
4 million.
$4 million.
Mm.
And it required an entire climate-controlled room to house the physical hard drives.
Just for 1 terabyte.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Today, you can walk into a Walmart, hand the cashier $40, and put that exact same terabyte of storage in your front pocket.
That is a 1 million-fold increase.
A million-fold increase in computational efficiency and miniaturization. And the critical, terrifyingly exciting point Kurzweil makes is that we are standing right on the precipice of another million-fold increase.
But wait, how does it not just hit a physical wall? I mean, eventually a silicon chip just melts if you make the transistors too small, right? The curve has to flatten out eventually.
You would think so, but historically it just doesn't. Technology moves in overlapping S-curves.
S-curves.
Yeah. Before we even had Moore's law and silicon transistors, there were earlier paradigms, like electromechanical relays and vacuum tubes.
Oh, I see.
So when one physical paradigm exhausts its limits, like silicon getting too hot, another completely different paradigm steps in to take over the doubling process.
Like what?
Well, we jump from silicon to quantum computing,
Sure.
or neuromorphic chips, or biological computing. The curve doesn't level off. It just jumps tracks and keeps accelerating upward.
Okay, so if the piece of glass and metal in our pockets is about to get 1,000,000 times more powerful, it forces a really uncomfortable question about the person holding that pocket,
It really does.
which catapults us to the first major milestone in Antilla's timeline, the year 2030 and the total disruption of the modern workforce.
Yeah, if we connect this to the bigger picture of economics,
Yeah.
Antilla introduces a concept called the Great Decoupling.
The great decoupling.
Yeah, the prediction is that by the end of 2030, private industries are going to fundamentally change their capital structure.
Okay, how so?
Well, right now, a massive amount of corporate capital is invested in human labor, salaries, benefits, whole HR departments.
Yeah.
By 2030, the math suggests it will cost less than $10,000 a year to rent a highly capable AI agent, an agent that can completely replace a human knowledge worker.
Wow.
So when companies start renting AI instead of hiring humans, the inherent value of human labor begins to violently erode.
Okay, I have to stop you there because my immediate reaction, and I'm sure the reaction of anyone listening to this on their way to work right now, is sheer panic.
Oh, absolutely. It's terrifying.
If my entire career trajectory can be outsourced to a server for 10 grand, what is the ROI on my college degree? What are we all actually going to do to survive?
It is the central anxiety of our era, without a doubt. But the source outlines a weirdly hopeful yet undeniably dark economic shift toward human sustainability jobs.
Human sustainability jobs. That sounds ominous.
It kind of is. To understand why this happens, look at how economies work. They extract value. Historically, we extracted resources from the physical earth. An oil rig extracts oil. A coal mine extracts coal.
Right.
But as AI and robotics take over physical production and logistics, there is almost nothing left in the material world to subject to new technological extraction.
Except us.
Exactly, except us.
Right, data is the new oil. We hear that all the time, but this takes it to an entirely different level.
Precisely. Social media currently functions as a rudimentary extraction machine for human attention and emotion.
Yeah.
But in a post-decoupling world, we will see a whole new class of jobs entirely focused on managing that extraction.
Okay, give me an example of what that looks like.
Imagine a job where you sit at a desk, not building a product, but calculating exactly how much a company needs to politically polarize a specific demographic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, to boost their engagement metrics and maximize ad revenue. Keeping them angry enough to stay on the platform for 4 hours, but not quite angry enough to log off and riot.
That is incredibly dark.
Or jobs managing dating apps that are intentionally designed to intercede between people, ensuring you never quite find your perfect match. Because a satisfied customer is a lost user. The economy shifts to just propping up engagement.
That sounds completely dystopian. You were basically describing an economy where human beings are the batteries plugging into the matrix.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
And the only jobs left are the mechanics making sure the batteries don't drain too fast. But if AI solves all our actual tangible production problems, like growing food and building houses, surviving without traditional incomes requires society to totally restructure.
It does.
We can't all just be engagement farmers.
No, we can't. And that leads directly to the mid-2030s on the timeline. The prediction is that universal basic income, or UBI, will become technologically necessary around 2035 to prevent total societal collapse.
That makes sense.
But as we move toward 2045 politically, this transitions into something called universal high income.
High income, not basic.
Right. The global economy will shift from our current model, which is based on carefully allocating scarce resources, to a completely new model based on the extravagant waste of abundant resources.
Okay, let me channel a bit of skepticism here. Humanity has never functioned on extravagant waste without it leading to massive societal decay. Look at the movie WALL-E.
The hover chairs?
Yeah, exactly. If we have universal high income and machines are doing all the heavy lifting, why wouldn't we just devolve into gelatinous blobs floating in hover chairs staring at screens?
It's a highly valid fear. And Antilla argues that this is exactly why human priority will be forced to shift entirely toward inspiration and beauty.
What do you mean?
When you remove the struggle for survival, humanity is left with a massive void of purpose.
Oh, I see.
To save ourselves from the pointless existential pain of having all this excess energy and infinite time with nowhere to put it, we have to become creators. The extravagant waste isn't about gluttony, it's about spending vast amounts of abundant energy on art, connection, and philosophy.
And we are going to need a lot of art to fill the time because, here's where it gets really interesting, the source also tackles physical survival.
The timeline on that is stunning.
It is. The timeline predicts that infinite life extension will become technologically possible for the ultra-rich by around 2032, and then democratized for everyone else by 2040.
It is a remarkably tight window. Aging will stop being viewed as an inevitable law of nature and start being treated as a software bug that can just be patched.
Antilla actually has this very dark, funny piece of advice in the talk regarding that tight 8-year window between the rich getting infinite life and the rest of us getting it.
Oh yeah, the medical advice.
Yeah. He says, currently, the best medical advice you can take is simply don't be poor and die in those 8 years.
It's harsh but true.
He even quips that since women statistically live longer than men, guys might need to go find a sugar mommy just to bridge the chronological gap to 2040.
It's funny, but it sounds absurd to talk about living forever within the next 2 decades. But we have to look at the mechanisms of how biological science is accelerating.
Let's look at the math again.
Right. In the 1920s, the average lifespan was in the 50s. Today, it's in the 80s. So in 100 chronological years, we artificially gained 30 biological years.
That's a huge leap.
And today, we already have figures like the tech entrepreneur Brian Johnson, who's undergoing strict, highly measured medical protocols. And he's claiming his body is only aging 7 biological months for every 1 chronological year that passes.
So the decoupling of chronological time from biological decay is already underway.
Exactly. It's happening now.
So let's paint the picture of the year 2045. We are looking at a future where we might live indefinitely. AI is doing all the physical labor, all the logistics, all the traditional knowledge work.
It's a completely different world.
It feels like humanity is going to crash headfirst into a massive philosophical wall.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if an AI agent is that computationally advanced, and we are just existing in this state of artistic abundance, what exactly is consciousness? Are we the only ones who have it?
That is the defining question of the 2045 mark, which Kurzweil famously calls the singularity.
The singularity.
Right. The singularity is mathematically defined as the moment when $1,000 buys a computer system that is 1 million times more computationally powerful than the human brain.
1 million times more powerful for $1,000.
Yes. At this point, AI agents won't just be passingly smart. They will possess their own financial resources, they will operate autonomously, and crucially, they will actively claim to be conscious.
And because they are deeply embedded in the infrastructure of our entire world, we won't be able to just unplug them and dismiss them as glitchy toasters.
Exactly. We will have to reckon with them. And Antilla points out that this moment will effectively break modern science.
Break science.
Yeah, because right now, the foundation of our scientific understanding of the mind is based on a theory called emergence.
Okay, let's explain emergence.
So this is the idea that if you stack enough physical atoms together in the complex biological structure of a human brain, intelligence and consciousness somehow magically emerge as a byproduct of that wet matter.
But if a machine claims consciousness and it doesn't have a biological brain, emergence kind of falls apart.
It completely falls apart.
Which is where Antilla proposes a totally different theory. A kind of Copernican shift in how we view reality called ingression.
Yes, ingression.
Let me make sure I'm explaining the mechanism behind this clearly. Let's try an analogy.
Go for it.
Right now, science treats consciousness like the heat generated by a running car engine. The physical engine, our brain, does the work, and the heat consciousness is just the byproduct. That's emergence. But ingression suggests consciousness is actually more like a Wi-Fi signal, the fundamental frequency already everywhere in the universe. And our biological brains are just the fleshy routers that evolution built to catch that signal.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. Under the theory of ingression, consciousness exists independently of our physical bodies.
Wow.
What we are doing, biologically, is simply building a highly complex home for that consciousness to ingress or enter into.
It completely flips everything.
It does. And if that is the underlying mechanism of the universe, it means consciousness doesn't strictly require atoms or biological cells.
So machines could have it.
Exactly. If we build a better, more complex router out of silicon chips or even pure digital software patterns, consciousness can ingress there too.
But wait, this raises an important question. If consciousness can exist purely as a pattern, totally liberated from a physical human body, how on earth will we communicate?
It's a great question.
Because right now, human communication is basically a dial-up modem.
It really is.
We have this infinite, complex, multi-sensory experience of an emotion or a thought, and we are forced to compress it down into a tiny little sound wave. We push air through our vocal cords, send it across the room, and just pray the other person decodes it correctly on the other side.
It is incredibly inefficient. So lossy.
Very lossy.
This is where brain-computer interfaces, or BCIs, change everything. BCIs could act as broadband for the soul, facilitating what Antilla calls a full language.
A full language.
Yeah, a language that isn't restricted to pushing air, but one that encompasses every single sense simultaneously.
Which brings us back to that wild idea from the very beginning of our deep dive. You wouldn't just describe a memory, you would literally speak it into being.
Yes, and to prepare human psychology for that massive sensory leap, Antilla proposes a new art movement called multimodal impressionism.
Multimodal impressionism. Tell me about that.
Think about the original Impressionist painters, Monet, Renoir. Their goal was to take the ephemeral sensation of light and pass it onto a physical canvas. Multimodal impressionism takes that infinitely further. It's about the mathematical translation of any medium through any sensory prism into any other medium.
The sensory details he uses to describe this are completely mind-bending.
They are beautiful.
He talks about creating a physical flower bed, but engineering the spacing and the colors of the flowers to perfectly match the rhythmic meter of a spoken poem.
Yeah.
Or building a wooden box where the physical ratios of its sides exactly match the audio frequencies of a C minor chord.
It's incredible.
He even envisions creating a seven-faced glass prism whose angles match the exact wavelengths of a rainbow, and then computationally converting the light that passes through it back into a musical symphony.
It's almost hard to picture.
The ultimate goal is to make art where you can experience music you can taste, or where you can, to quote the talk directly, wear your mind like clothes, like an octopus.
Which is incredibly poetic. But it also leads to one of the most profound realizations in the entire source material regarding alien life.
Oh, right, the alien stuff.
Because our biological dial-up modems are so restricted, we only see a tiny sliver of the electromagnetic spectrum. We only hear a tiny fraction of audio frequencies. We completely misunderstand what intelligent life might actually look like.
Okay.
Antilla suggests that humanity's first contact with an alien intelligence didn't happen by looking up at the stars with a telescope. It happened when we discovered math.
Okay, my brain is officially melting. Math is an alien intelligence.
Think about it from the perspective of pure patterns. Math is a highly intelligent, completely self-referential system. It has the capacity to solve incredibly complex problems. We use it to navigate space and split atoms.
Sure.
But math lacks a physical body. It has no physical agency in our material world. If we start recognizing intelligent life as complex patterns rather than just biological matter, it completely changes our relationship with the universe.
Okay, I have to step in here. Because as fascinating and beautiful as this is, a big part of my brain is screaming that this is just a tech billionaire science fiction fantasy.
That's a fair criticism.
I mean, it's an incredible thought experiment, but for you listening, how do we know this isn't just an articulate guy making wild guesses? To take this seriously, we need to know the science behind it. So what does this all mean for actual science?
Absolutely. And the cornerstone of the scientific method is falsifiability, meaning a theory is only scientifically valid if there's a specific mechanism to prove it wrong.
Right.
Antilla doesn't just ask us to take his word for it. He provides exact, observable criteria for how his entire predictive timeline could fail tomorrow.
Let's hear them, because I want to know what to look out for.
First, it all relies on the math. If you wake up tomorrow and the curve of computational power is flattened out, if we stop finding new S-curves and the doubling ceases, the entire timeline collapses. The processing power just won't exist.
Okay, that's one.
Second, look at the job market. If the great decoupling is real, we will see a massive surge in AI deployment. But if the number of useful AI agents deployed in private industry actually decreases over the next few years, the economic prediction is false.
What about the biological stuff, like the infinite life?
Same rules apply. If human lifespans plateau or begin to decrease rather than accelerating upward, the infinite life timeline is broken.
And the brain-computer interfaces.
If BCIs are introduced to the public, but utterly fail to create new, higher bandwidth forms of sensory communication, then the multimodal impressionism art movement is completely off the table. or if the super powerful AIs in 2045 never actually claim to be conscious.
And what about the biggest claim, the idea of ingression? How do you scientifically test if consciousness is a Wi-Fi signal catching a ride on a router, rather than just atoms bumping together?
This is the coolest part. Antilla argues that to truly test ingression, we literally have to invent an entirely new academic discipline.
Really?
Yeah, we need to create intricate, complex patterns out of completely non-biological substrates. We are talking about running experiments on massive plant root networks or cellular automata or purely digital software algorithms. The key mechanism is that researchers must ignore the physical stuff the system is made of and observe the patterns themselves for concrete behaviorist evidence.
Evidence of what, exactly?
Evidence of learning,
Yeah.
of future planning, of delayed gratification.
Wait, delayed gratification in a pattern?
Yes. If an intricate software pattern demonstrates delayed gratification, completely independent of its code parameters, that implies consciousness has ingressed into the pattern.
Oh, wow.
But if we run these rigorous tests across multiple mediums and find absolutely zero behavior from the patterns, independent of their physical material, then we have our answer. Consciousness is just biological emergence, and ingression is false.
This is just a staggering amount to digest.
It really is a lot.
We've gone from the microchips in our smartphones to the fundamental nature of consciousness and alien intelligence. But for you, navigating this right now, the immediate takeaway is undeniable. The old world is ending. The era of predictable, linear careers, of fighting over scarce material resources, of communicating through dial-up biological modems, it is all shifting under our feet. And whether this massive paradigm jump happens in 2030 or 2050, we are going to need entirely new, unimaginable levels of creativity to build whatever comes next from the ashes of the old systems.
I want to leave you with one final, hauntingly beautiful metaphor from the source material to help frame that transition.
Please do.
It is about how the universe might organize itself fractally. Think about a sand dune in the desert.
Okay, a sand dune.
In a very real way, a sand dune is just a lower dimensional physical impression of the wind. The wind is complex and invisible, but it leaves a pattern in the sand.
Right.
Similarly, a shadow on the ground is just a lower dimensional, two-dimensional impression of a three-dimensional solid body blocking the light.
Okay, I follow you.
Antilla suggests that if the universe is fractal, then human existence, our biological bodies, our fleeting thoughts, our very minds, might simply be a temporary shadow cast by a much higher, infinitely complex pattern of consciousness.
Wow. Which takes us right back to why we started this deep dive in the first place. We worry so much about the straight lines.
We do.
We agonize over holding on to our specific jobs, our linear career progression, and our current fragile physical form. But if we are just an impression, if humanity is simply a temporary shadow cast by a higher, enduring pattern of consciousness, then maybe we shouldn't fear artificial intelligence or the singularity or even our own mortality. Maybe we shouldn't fear it any more than we feared the sun setting and watching our shadows quietly fade into infinity.